Just a quick little video to let you know about a film I just saw that really impressed me, and that's something I haven't been able to say a lot this year, so it actually excites me to be able to tell you about something that really you should get out there and see. It's an Indian import, which isn't surprising since there's a huge horror explosion happening in that part of the world right now. And although it might seem like it's a remake of the 2003 film from India called Bhoot, it's not. It's using that title to build an audience, but it's a completely different story. That original film was really well regarded when it came out. It hasn't aged particularly well. This movie is going to have a very different fate, I feel, because it's really a very solid film. And we'll get to the few things that I think might hold it back slightly, but mostly I gotta tell you, this is the best time I've spent in the theater so far this year. Not that America has made that a big challenge, but this was really refreshing. The film was directed by Bhoot Part One, and it is a really good-looking film. That's the first thing. Is one of the hallmarks of Indian cinema is that they really do paint the screen with colors and shapes and great set design. I mean, that might sound like a generalization, but it's really just part of the language of film in that culture. And it's also in the last few years really noteworthy how much different this generation of filmmakers in India is than they were in the 70s and 80s and 90s. This isn't going to throw you culturally like films in the past perhaps did. In fact, I would say that if this film were English language, I don't think anyone would look at it any different than any American film. The performances are awesome, the music is great, and the sound design is some of the best I've ever heard, period. Now, the movie itself is a haunted house thriller on a boat rather than in a house, but that's really all just window dressing. This is really a film that's a meditation on grief and guilt. But what I'm really impressed about here, and especially coming from India, where unfortunately in the past, sometimes the movies did get overly sentimental. This movie doesn't make that mistake. It treats the subject of grief and of guilt very matter of fact. It's just a part of the world that these characters live in. The film really centers around a single character who is a maritime investigator, and his quest to make right a personal failing in his life that cost him his family. I don't want to get into any spoilers here, because the film does actually have a plot, which makes it very different than, say, the Grudge reboot that happened this year. In fact, the two films on the surface have a lot in common, but beyond the surface, they're nothing alike whatsoever. Grudge so far may be the worst film of the year so far for me in the genre, whereas this is the best. But on the surface level, they both feature ghosts. They both feature some jump scares. The difference is there was empty jump scares in Grudge. And here, all of those scares have real impact to the story. The characters are actually in danger when those moments happen. Yeah, there's a loud sound on the soundtrack and a flurry of motion, but it actually always means that something really dangerous is occurring for these characters. Now, this is a deeply psychological movie, which is also a big difference. It has layers to it. And at the same time, it has a great sense of pacing despite the fact that it is 2 hours long. It probably could lose 15 or 20 minutes and tighten up, but I was really glad it didn't, because I loved marinating in that world that it was being built. I loved looking at a film that actually wanted to tell a story about something and do it in a really compelling way. Now, I mentioned that there are certain limitations to the film, and one of them is really unfair. It's always a fool's errand to judge dialogue after it's been translated from another language, especially languages that have so many idioms in them, like Hindi. So it might seem unfair to say that the dialogue is a little too on the nose at times, but it's certainly a little bit more transparent than what we're used to in America. That said, there's nothing really egregious here. It's just that it's a little more obvious in its dialogue than we're used to. So maybe you'll take that as a limitation, maybe you won't. It didn't really bother me, but I could see it bothering other people. The other issue that might hold this film back a little bit is that it's just not available. Yeah, it's playing in 40-some theaters in America at the moment, and please check your listings and dive deep, see if it's out there, because there's 2 other horror movies out this weekend I want to see both of them, though I think I might be looking at diminishing returns from here on out. But this is the one that's on the least amount of screens, and I fear it might be the best of the trio. That unavailability is going to be a problem for a film like this to grow an audience in America, and that's a shame. The film does open by letting us know that Amazon Prime is the streaming partner for this film, and it does mean that it will eventually be available on that platform. But like I've said a million times in other videos about other films from India, you're going to have to search for it. It's not going to come up under new releases or even under the horror new releases. You're going to actually have to type in the title and then it'll come up. And that's in 3 months, 4 months. No one's going to announce when it hits streaming in America, so you're going to have to be vigilant. That holds a movie like this back, and it's really unfair to the audience. One last thing about content, which I know I'm a little bit scatterbrained, but I really enjoyed this film so much that I'm excited to tell it to you. There's something at the end of this movie that really caught me off guard from a storytelling point of view. And it makes complete sense. It just happens suddenly and firmly, and it comes as a big surprise. And it's not a plot moment so much as it is a natural resolution to the plot. But when it happened so boldly and so concretely that I was really taken aback. It wouldn't happen in an American film. I'm going to tell you that right now. Anyway, I'm not going to go on any longer. I just want to let you know that there is something on the market right now that you really should go out and see. It's not a perfect movie. How many movies really are? But it's a really, really good horror film in a year that has not seen anything of this quality yet.